I'm not focused on the extracurricular activities, and during that, it was just part of the game. I think the refs had a lot to do with that. It was a build-up for a couple of years now of them just not protecting, the star player of the WNBA. And so, at the end of the day, I'm going to protect my teammates. That's what I do, and I'm a team player. So
I looked seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it at Iowa. You see these TV ratings. And then what?
Kelsey Plum is pissed off. And she's pissed off because she's not getting the foul calls that she believes other players in the league are getting. And let's go to the tape. I want you to see this because I love it when an athlete gets to the point of righteous indignation. When an athlete says, I'm going to be fined, and I realize that, and I don't care. I got to get this off my chest. I'm ready to listen. And believe me, Kelsey Plum has some things to say.
I understand this, but I drive more than anyone in the league. So to shoot 6 free throws is absurd. And I got scratches on my face, I got scratches on my body, and these guards on the other team get these ticky-tack fouls, and I'm sick of it. I get fouled like that every possession. Ricky gets fouled like that in the post all the time, and they don't call it. 6 free throws. I'm playing 40 minutes, touching the paint almost every play is absurd. I'll get fined for that, and that's fine, but and I needed to make more shots, late game, but, they're fouling the shit out of me every single play.
They're fouling the shit out of her on every single play. Scratches on my face, scratches on my body. The other team gets these ticky-tacky foul calls. She said she prays before the game. She's nice to the referees. What does this woman have to do? She's a former #1 overall pick in the WNBA. She's a former 6th woman of the year. 3-time All-Star. Kelsey Plum, I don't know. Some people are reading in between the lines on this about her complaints about the officiating. Is there more to it? Is she trying to make a bigger statement about a league-wide problem? I don't know.
We're working with WNBA owners that also own NBA teams, and then more broadly, the NBA owners on what the right valuation of WNBA teams are going forward, what the best way is to operate that league. It's very integrated now with the NBA. There's aspects over time under Commissioner Engelbert's direction where they're still fairly integrated. They share the same office space with the NBA, but under her direction, we've added some separate departments, like, for example, where they're doing their own marketing right now. They have their own basketball operations department. So it's a balance of things, but I'd say we're collectively looking at all those issues, figuring out the right way to operate going forward.
I think that I have a huge passion for the game of basketball. I have a huge passion for women's leadership. And I think, I'm really excited to be entering into the WNBA commissioner role as a real platform for all of these players, the owners, the whole basketball ecosystem, quite frankly, to drive it, to the next level. Clearly, the biggest opportunities for the league are to enhance the fan experience, the player experience, for there to be a recognition of how important a time in women's leadership and the W's role in that. So this is just such a great time for everyone to rally around these WNBA players, attend the games, sponsor the WNBA, use it as part of your women's leadership platform. I think there's so much potential upside. I'm very excited.
The moment Cathy Engelbert stepped forward to speak, a silence swept across the sports world. For weeks, tension had been building behind the scenes. Leaks, internal whispers, and investigative reporting had all pointed towards something far deeper than officiating inconsistencies or minor league drama. This was bigger. It had the weight of something that could shake the very structure of the sport itself. And now, the commissioner's voice was the only one the public wanted to hear. Engelbert didn't start with excuses. She didn't begin with a denial. Instead, her tone was deliberate, cautious, and carefully chosen. She acknowledged the questions, the controversy, and the recent announcement by Adam Silver, an announcement that confirmed the existence of internal guidance given to officials in the WNBA. It was that guidance, and the reward system tied to it, that had ignited this firestorm in the first place. Silver's words hadn't accused Engelbert directly, but they left no doubt that under her leadership, something had been allowed to grow unchecked. A quiet framework existed, one that rewarded referees not for accuracy, but for adhering to a narrative. Officials were encouraged, sometimes subtly and sometimes explicitly, to manage games in ways that aligned with certain outcomes. Whether through emails, memos, or pre-game briefings, the message became clear. Some players were not to be favored. The story of the league took precedence over the fairness of the whistle. At the center of this controversy was the meteoric rise of Caitlin Clark. From the day she entered the league, her presence had changed everything. Ticket sales exploded, merchandising reached new heights, television ratings set records, and yet, something always felt off. Her games were more physical, her free throw attempts lower than expected. Fouls that seemed obvious went uncalled. Fans began to ask questions, and those questions became louder after Silver's admission. Engelbert's statement, though measured, acknowledged this shift. She admitted that internal communications had occurred. She didn't call them bribes, she didn't use the language that the media had, but she didn't deny that perks were offered, or that certain officials received preferential treatment based on how they interpreted game flow. Travel upgrades, prime game assignments, quiet acknowledgments behind closed doors, all of it painted a picture of a league trying to balance integrity with image, and failing. What emerged from Engelbert's explanation was not a confession of guilt, but a recognition of consequences. She described an environment where pressure mounted to deliver compelling narratives. With the spotlight brighter than ever before, the instinct to control outcomes grew. Decisions weren't made maliciously, she claimed, but rather as misguided attempts to maintain competitive balance and entertainment value. But intent didn't absolve impact. Clark's games became the lens through which the entire league was now viewed. Investigators found consistent trends. Certain referees were involved in her most controversial matchups. In games they officiated, Clark's performance visibly shifted. Her fouls drawn dropped, contact increased, and outcomes often leaned away from what analysts predicted. It wasn't just bad luck. It was part of a system that prioritized optics over objectivity. Multiple referees stepped forward to validate those concerns. In sworn testimony and confidential interviews, they shared details of pre-game discussions where Clark was mentioned by name. They were told to maintain balance, to let the game breathe, to avoid giving her what one memo called excessive attention. Those instructions, though coded, had consequences. They shaped games, they influenced outcomes, and they undermined the core fairness fans expect. Engelbert's remarks attempted to shift focus toward reform. She pledged a full third-party review. She promised to implement changes in how officiating assignments were made and how performance was evaluated. Her office, she said, would no longer have direct contact with officials before or after games. Instead, a new oversight committee would handle all communications. The goal was to rebuild trust. But trust, once broken, doesn't return easily. Silver's earlier press conference had already laid bare the system. He revealed that bonuses and travel perks were being used as unofficial rewards. These weren't part of public policy. They were informal, but consistent. Referees who followed the league's internal tone, who managed games to reduce drama or highlight certain players, were quietly elevated. Those who didn't found themselves removed from high-profile assignments. The fallout was swift. Several sponsors paused campaigns. Fan forums lit up with outrage. Coaches began requesting written explanations for officiating decisions. And in the middle of it all, Clark remained calm. When asked for her response, she chose her words carefully. She didn't point fingers. She didn't complain. Instead, she expressed hope that the league would hold itself accountable and that fair competition would always be the priority. Her quiet grace only amplified the gravity of what was happening. Behind the scenes, the Board of Governors held urgent meetings. Ownership groups voiced concerns about damage to the brand. One executive reportedly described the situation as a credibility crisis. The sport had grown, the fan base had expanded. But with that growth came scrutiny. And under that microscope, the cracks had been exposed. Engelbert, facing mounting pressure, agreed to step away temporarily while the investigation continued. An interim panel was formed to oversee the officiating department. Their first move was to bring in external analysts to review past games, looking for trends, inconsistencies, and patterns tied to the list Silver referenced. The results of that review would determine the league's next steps. Referees began to speak more openly. One described feeling trapped, torn between doing what was right and doing what was expected. Another admitted that while the bonuses were modest, they created a culture of compliance. You knew what kind of game they wanted, and if you delivered it, you moved up. If you didn't, you were sidelined. The public reaction was unrelenting. Media coverage spanned every outlet. Headlines dissected every word of Engelbert's statement. Commentators debated whether her actions were a misstep or a violation of the sport's core principles. And all the while, fans kept showing up. Not because they weren't angry, but because they still believed in the game. They just wanted it back. As the weeks passed, reforms began to take shape. Officiating metrics were made public. Player feedback became part of referee evaluations. A whistleblower hotline was introduced for internal use, allowing officials and staff to report irregularities without fear. Transparency became the new directive. Every game was now being watched, not just by fans, but by auditors trained to spot manipulation. Engelbert, in a follow-up appearance, didn't attempt to defend the past. Instead, she focused on what could come next. She spoke about restoring faith, about honoring the players who gave their all every night. And while her words were careful, they carried a weight that showed she understood the damage done. Clark, for her part, continued to play through the noise. Her performances spoke louder than any statement, and in that silence, she reminded everyone what the league should stand for: grit, skill, fairness. The crowd still cheered, the jerseys still sold. But now, every whistle was heard differently. Every no call came with a question. Every game carried more meaning. And yet, there was hope. The crisis had forced change. The system had been exposed. And with that exposure came the chance to rebuild. Fans, though disappointed, began to see signs of progress. Players reported more consistent officiating. Coaches noted fewer missed calls. The sport, bruised but unbroken, moved forward. Engelbert's role in this story isn't over. Her decisions will be studied, her leadership debated, but what matters now is whether the league learns from this moment, whether it grows, not just in size, but in integrity. Because a game is more than just points and stats. It's a trust between players, fans, and the people who run it. And that trust, once lost, takes time to earn back.